Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'm going to talk about D'Angelo and the Black Messiah album. And first off, rest in peace to D'Angelo. He passed away about a month ago on October 14th from pancreatic cancer, and he was 51 years old. And what's crazy is that Angie Stone, the neo soul singer who was D'Angelo's ex, also passed away earlier this year in a car accident. And they played a huge role in each other's careers. And I believe they have a son together. And by their son losing two of the most important people in his life in the same year, especially with the holidays coming up, I know he's going to be taking it pretty hard. So my deepest condolences to him and the rest of the family. And with D'Angelo, we may only know him as this R&B singer, but he did other stuff prior to that, like rapping as a teenager. He was part of this local rap group called IDU down in Richmond. And he also won the Apollo Theater's Amateur Night contest 3 times in a row around the age of 18. And he used that prize money to buy recording equipment, which he used to make the demos for his first album, Brown Sugar. And before his debut, he co-wrote and co-produced this hit song that came out back in like 94 called You Would Know for the R&B supergroup Black Men United. And I remember the name, but I didn't know who they were. But it was basically a supergroup that featured artists like Usher and Boyz II Men and all them. But I'm going to share my thoughts on D'Angelo and then talk about the album, the last one that he came out with in 2014 called Black Messiah. And when we talk about D'Angelo dropping that album in 2014, everybody talks about the lyrics and the long wait. But what I want to talk about is whether the Ferguson riots saved D'Angelo's career. Because if the Ferguson riots never happened, would D'Angelo just be known as a 90s R&B and neo soul singer? But I want to start from the beginning when D'Angelo first came out with Brown Sugar, the first album, because I remember when that album first dropped. It was back in the mid 90s, and I believe I was in the 6th grade when I first heard of this cat. And during that time, it was like you couldn't turn on the radio without hearing those hit songs, Lady, Brown Sugar, and Cruising, which was a Smokey Robinson remake. And compared to the other songs that were being played on the radio, I noticed how different D'Angelo's sound was. His sound was that raw, funky organ. It kind of had that old school church music feel to it, and it wasn't that standard R&B everybody else was doing. That hip hop sounding R&B that was dominating the R&B airwaves. And what I realized later on was that I was listening to one of the original guys who created neo soul. He was cool and smooth and basically made regular R&B cool enough for people who thought regular R&B was too soft. And he was a big deal back in like 95 and 96, and he helped popularize the cornrows that a lot of the brothers were wearing at the time, a look that you would only see on rappers like Old Dirty Bastard from the Wu-Tang Clan, for example, not R&B singers. And D'Angelo's singing style always reminded me of Prince a lot of the time, but I know I wasn't the only one who thought that, because I can still remember some folks were actually accusing him of being a Prince wannabe, but I don't think so. I think he was just inspired, but he didn't try to be Prince. But I can see what they mean though, because when you listen closely, you could hear the Prince influence all over, especially with that signature high pitched scream he hits near the end of that song. How does it feel? Which was from his second album, Voodoo, that was released in 2000. And in fact, that song was written as a direct tribute to Prince's earlier work, like a modernized version of his classic slow jam, Do Me Baby. And I remember when he first dropped that How Does It Feel video, he's completely oiled up, looking like a literal marble sculpture. And it was one of the first things that ever truly break the internet. And then poof, he disappeared for 14 years. We haven't heard from him so long, and I think it was because of all the pressure of fame and the expectation of having to be the next great thing, and all that got to him. But after 14 years of female fans waiting for another sexy ballad, what did D'Angelo give us in 2014? A new album called Black Messiah with this band the Vanguard. And he released it during the Ferguson riots when all that shit was going on, and that nation's tragedy actually saved D'Angelo's career. He became the funk soul hero by showing up at the exact same time with the exact right kind of sound, because all that pressure, fame had nearly destroyed him. But the tragedy of the Ferguson riots and the national demand for justice gave him something bigger than fame to fight for. And when people first heard this album, they was confused because they thought, these are basically love songs. This ain't a protest album. This is just a funky record about love and life. I don't get it, because it wasn't like a Public Enemy album release where every song is a loud political speech. But the thing is that D'Angelo did it with a vibe, not shouting. But he did do something similar to what Public Enemy would do. Like, he sampled Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, the Muslim activist, talking on one of his songs. And I think it's called A Thousand Deaths, where it starts out with Dr. Muhammad on the whole controversial debate of Jesus' identity, claiming, he was actually black. Basically referencing the description of Jesus in the Bible, where he's like, when I talk about Jesus, I'm not talking about some blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned complexion of cracker Christ. I'm talking about Jesus from the Bible with hair like lamb's wool, that good nappy hair, which is how I believe D'Angelo came up with the title of his album, with that concept of Black Messiah and Afrocentric theology. Then I believe after that, there's another speech that's sampled on that song from Fred Hampton, from the Black Panthers. And then another song, The Charade, where the Prince influence is obvious, is straight up about police violence and injustice, where he's talking about the whole Black Lives Matter movement, where the standout part we know is all we wanted was a chance to talk. Instead, we only got outline and chalk. That's a gut punch. And even the love songs fit the album because they're part of the message that black love, joy, and spiritual strength, is necessary when the world around you just so messy and oppressive. And that's why I believe this album wasn't just about the music. It was about the timing, because Black Messiah dropped when the country was in turmoil over the Michael Brown and Eric Gardner killings. The decision to not indict those police officers created this massive demand for change and for justice. And see, during the protests, we had powerful rap and hip hop music, but what was missing was that classic funky soul protest anthem, that sound that was rooted in the civil rights movement. Because even though we all hate tragedy, but sometimes a bit of good does come from it. Because think back to 1968 when Dr. King was assassinated. There were race riots that were going on in over 100 cities that caused massive destruction. Like down here in Louisville, for example, where it all started on 28th and Greenwood, where black people were so mad they was tearing up shit, tearing up anything that belongs to a white man. And just like the grocery stores in the West End, and people were like, man, they turned up their own stores. Now a white man owned it, or a Jew owned it. Black folks were just mad, and they used to spray paint soul brother or soul sister on their windows of their house, to where that they let you know that it was black owned. If a white man owned the house, they didn't give a fuck if you lived there. They gonna tear that shit up. But blacks had to write soul brother on the side of the house, and black owned stores were safe. But they're bust up drugstores like Super X, which is Walgreens now, those type of stores. And they got looted and shit like that, such as a shoe store over there on Broadway got looted and burned down to the ground. But that national shock and sorrow and anger forced Congress to act right away and pass the Civil Rights Act of 68, making it illegal to discriminate against black people trying to rent or buy a house outside of a black neighborhood. And President Johnson signed it just 1 week after King died as a tribute. And that law banned discrimination in housing based on your race, religion, or where you came from. And Black Messiah served that same function for music. And that album is probably the only positive thing that came out of the Ferguson riots, other than the federal government stepping in with a court order basically demanding the Ferguson Police Department to clean up their act and change how they do shit. But like I said, tragedy sometimes creates perfect conditions for genius to emerge. And D'Angelo was a funk soul hero for dropping Black Messiah. And funk and soul fans appreciated that album because that style he brought back simply disappeared from the mainstream. But D'Angelo was like, nah, this old sound is still necessary. He didn't invent nothing new. He just resurrected the raw funk of Sly Stone and the protest spirit of Curtis Mayfield. He basically brought back the only sound that was heavy enough to talk about that struggle. And he didn't even try to make it easy to listen to because Black Messiah, for the most part, when you listen to it, it's messy, muffled, and hard to listen to sometimes. And he didn't drop a clean, catchy single or a pop album. I mean, the album really ain't that bad. And I understood that he rushed it out because of the Ferguson riots. He was exploding and all that. But because of that, I knew that it was policy and not laziness. Because D'Angelo knew the struggle was serious and the music wasn't supposed to be slick pop. It needed to be brutal, chaotic, and truly authentic. And the music is full of flaws, and it was intentional because the sound is unpolished, the vocals are buried, and the rhythm is unstable. It was what I call political funk, to where he was shifting the purpose of the groove from seduction to protest. And he made the music difficult because the reality was difficult. And he refused to give us an easy, confident soundtrack to a national crisis. And Black Messiah is, I would say, a deeply political album. It's the soundtrack for a generation fight for justice. And when he passed, we're realizing how rare that impact was, a legacy that lives beyond music. And this is clear as day because when he died, you had major figures like Stevie Wonder and President Obama publicly honoring him because D'Angelo wasn't just a singer; he was a necessary figure. And now he's gone, and that's how you know times are changing because a lot of folks from my area that I grew up listening to are leaving, and it's something to think about. But rest in peace to D'Angelo. He gave us the groove and he gave us the message. And this is Big Brother 749 signing out. I'm out. Peace.